cameras were on long before anyone realized it. Behind the stage, filled with the noise of staff and the blinding lights, the tiny moment happened so quickly, yet slow enough to be captured by the thousands of eyes watching their every move. Taehyung stood in the crowd, smiling as usual, while someone approached and gave him a warm hug. At first glance, it seemed normal. But in the corner of the camera frame, Jungkook looked different. At first, no one really noticed. The clip was just a few seconds of footage from the day. But as fans replayed it, slowed it down, and noticed tiny, almost imperceptible details, something began to feel strange. Jungkook didn't move. He just stood there, his eyes fixed on Taehyung, and his expression changed so subtly, almost undetectable. There was a small pause in the air. It wasn't dramatic or noticeable, but enough to make the atmosphere feel a little heavy. Taehyung was still laughing in the embrace, while everyone around him chatted as usual. But Jungkook seemed to take a slow breath, then lowered his gaze for a moment. To some, it might have meant nothing. But to fans who had watched them for years, that small change felt like a signal. The footage began circulating on various platforms. Some said Jungkook looked awkward. Others thought his expression looked hurt. Still others insisted it was just a camera illusion, a fleeting moment exaggerated by fans' imaginations. But the more the clip played, the more details emerged. One of the most striking things was Jungkook's silence afterward. He's usually someone who reacts quickly, laughing, joking, or otherwise engaging in the situation around him. But in the footage, he remained silent for a few seconds. His eyes followed Taehyung's movements, then slowly looked away. When the hug ended, Taehyung was still smiling broadly. He was talking to someone else, unaware that this small moment had sparked a wave of speculation among viewers. Jungkook, on the other hand, seemed to step away slightly. It wasn't dramatic, just a small, almost imperceptible step. But sometimes a small step can say a lot. Fans who rewatched the clip began comparing it to hundreds of other moments between the two of them. The way Jungkook usually reacted when Taehyung was around other people. The way he often teased or attracted Taehyung's attention back. Those tiny patterns made this moment feel different. Some believe it was jealousy. Not full-blown jealousy, but a quieter kind. One that manifests itself only in a barely perceptible change in expression or body language. A feeling that the person experiencing it might not even be aware of. But there's also another, more complex possibility. The relationship between the two of them has always been filled with dynamics that are difficult to explain in simple words. Years of sharing the stage, rehearsals, travel, and the pressures of showbiz create a very unique bond. In such situations, emotions can emerge in very subtle forms. Some fans noticed something else in the footage. Right after the hug, Taehyung glanced at Jungkook. It was only for a split second, but enough to make some wonder if he noticed the change in atmosphere around him. The glance was brief, but meaningful to those who noticed. Was Taehyung trying to reassure them that everything was okay? Or was it just a coincidence that the camera caught the right angle at the right time? It's hard to say for sure. Cameras often capture small snippets of reality, not the whole story. What seemed tense in one frame could vanish in the next. But interestingly, seconds later, Jungkook finally smiled again. It wasn't his usual big smile, but it was enough to restore a sense of normalcy. He even seemed to say something to another member nearby. It was as if the moment had never happened. But for fans who had seen it, the impression remained. Not because they wanted to create drama, but because they were used to reading the subtle body language that often appeared between the members. And in a world where every movement was recorded, even the slightest change in expression could tell a long story. There's a good chance it was all a misunderstanding. That Jungkook was just tired that day, or perhaps he was thinking about something completely unrelated to Taehyung's hug. The camera never really showed the full context. But there's also the possibility that the moment was real, an emotion that spontaneously emerged before it could be hidden. Whatever the truth, the brief clip reminds us of one thing. Human relationships are always more complex than they appear on screen. Even amidst the glare of cameras and millions of fans, there are small moments that still feel incredibly personal. And perhaps that's why those few seconds felt so powerful. Because in Jungkook's silence, in Taehyung's embrace, and in that split-second glance, fans saw something more than just a simple scene. They saw a story that had never been fully explained. In the hours after the clip began circulating, discussions among fans grew heated. People replayed the same footage over and over again, trying to decipher every tiny movement they might have missed at first glance. In a world filled with cameras and spotlights, sometimes the simplest moments are the most difficult to explain. Some fans began to notice previously undisclosed details. The way Jungkook stood with his shoulders slightly stiff, the way his eyes briefly followed Taehyung even after the hug ended. It wasn't a long gaze, but it was enough to make many feel that Jungkook was thinking about something at that moment. Interestingly, a few seconds after all this happened, Taehyung moved closer to the same direction Jungkook had been standing before. His movements were casual, as if he were simply changing positions in the crowd. But to those paying close attention, the moment felt like a small part of a wordless conversation. There was no clear dialogue in the footage. The background music and the staff's voices drowned out any words. But body language often says more than long sentences. The way they stood close together, the way Jungkook eventually relaxed again, led some to believe that whatever happened was very brief. Some fans also recalled many previous moments when Jungkook seemed slightly more sensitive to situations involving Taehyung. Not in a negative sense, but more like a very intense concern. Relationships built over years often create such sensitivity without even realizing it. But of course, all of this remains open to interpretation. The camera only captures a moment in time, and those moments often lack the context of what's actually happening around them. What seems like tension could simply be a coincidence of camera angles or lighting that makes expressions appear different. However, the reason the clip continues to be talked about isn't just the hug itself. What makes it compelling is the seemingly rapid change in mood, from easy laughter to a brief, inexplicable silence, and then back to normal as if nothing ever happened. Such things often happen in very close relationships. Sometimes an emotion appears for a split second, then vanishes just as quickly. To an outsider, the moment can seem dramatic. But to those in the situation, it's likely just a small part of everyday interaction. Ultimately, the footage leaves more questions than answers. Was there really jealousy captured on camera? Or was it just a fleeting expression that happened to seem more serious than usual? No one really knows except those who were there at the time. But it's precisely that small mystery that makes those few seconds of footage so compelling to so many.